Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Manager, the podcast where we reframe the invisible work of women as powerful leadership. I'm your host, Aimee Rickabus, author, entrepreneur, mama of six, and advocate for every woman who's ever carried the mental load. Today, we're flipping the script a bit because for the first time on this show, we're welcoming a male guest. But trust me, he's not just any guest. Bart Morse is the founder of the Lion's Den program, a transformational coaching experience designed to help men become better partners, fathers, and leaders. He's worked with tech giants like Microsoft and T-Mobile, but his real genius lies in helping men drop their defenses, take ownership, and step into authentic emotional leadership. If you've ever wished the men in your life had a manual for how to show up with more clarity, presence, and accountability, this episode is for you. We're talking about what it takes to build trust, shift household dynamics, and build real partnership at home. Let's get into it. Hey, Bart. Nice to have you on the show. Thank you so much for showing up for me today.
Thank you, Aimee. Great to be here. It's a real honor.
Yeah, well, you're our very first man on the show,
No
so
way.
you're in new territory here
Oh,
for
I
the
didn't realize
manager.
that. That is
Yeah,
an honor.
yes, I know, the very first man. So, as you know, or maybe you don't, but most of our listeners are women, and many of them are carrying a lot of emotional and mental labor at home. How do you help men begin to recognize the weight that their partners are carrying
hmm
and how to take real responsibility for that?
That's a great question. A lot of the men that come to me and what I do, the program that I run was born out of helping men in marital crisis. So oftentimes they've heard the word separation or divorce, but not always. Sometimes, they just know that they need to level up. So that's an important context, because if you're talking to a man who's not going through that, he's probably going to have, sort of a different attention span for what I might say. When a man realizes that his marriage is on the line, he's a lot more uh, open, right, to kind of receiving what I have to say. And I'm gonna say more about that in a second. But essentially, what I would say is a lot of men realize, albeit sometimes too late, that they've been extremely focused on providing and not much else. And so
Yeah.
I help guys to see that there's a whole kind of relational, emotional role that they have in the marriage that they've probably not been tending to and in any in the way that they could. In other words, they're not leading. And so
Right.
once you kind of that clicks for a man, then the whole kind of lens changes for them, and they recognize, oh yeah, I really am not planning much. I'm really not being proactive in this way. I'm really not asking a lot of questions to sort of find out where she's at, what she's going through, what she's feeling. And so
Right.
it takes kind of that, sometimes that crisis moment for a man to just be able to kind of hear, what he needs to hear. But the cool thing is, like, once a guy sort of sees it, then he'll want, to lead, because all men, I mean, for the most part, want to be a better leader. And so I don't know if
Yeah,
that's if
absolutely.
that's,
Yeah. I
answering
feel that.
the
I feel that.
question.
That's a really such a leadership is such an interesting angle and lens to perceive the behavior through. Because a lot of times, we as the women in the house, seems like the more kids you have, it's almost easier for the husband to fall in line with the children.
Yes.
And then it's like mom becomes the leader, all the ducklings are following her. And so then dad just starts following her too. And it's like,
Yep.
he would probably be happier in more of a leadership position in the domestic sphere too. She would be happier with
Yep.
him being in a leadership position as well.
Now, I want to defend men a little bit here, because of course, I know the journey that men have gone through when it comes to, a- all of the hardships that come with marriage. I was married 15 years myself, and have gone through the whole gamut. And I'll just tell you that men's preparation for marriage is pretty much this: bring home a paycheck and make sure nobody dies, right? That's kind of the plan. That's kind of the plan that we go into marriage with. Now, I'm being a bit facetious because, of course, we have connection with our, with the woman in our life, and there's emotional connection, and we go and on dates and vacations and things like that. But if you were to really ask a man, what's the plan? He wouldn't have one. He really wouldn't have one. He's really going to be like, well, I'm going to, provide for my wife and kids and protect them. And that's about as far as he's going to have planned. And so I think it's
Got it. And
important for women to just understand that that is his primary concern, because that is what he's been taught by his family, society, that's where his value lies. A man's
for
value,
sure,
right,
yeah.
to society, right or wrong, is how much he can produce. And
Yeah.
some men subscribe to that more than others.
Mhm.
But that's where the disconnect happens, is he's just like going, I was taught to crush it at work and I would get rewarded for that.
Totally, thinking that that's the only thing that he needs to do, and also that that's gonna make him happy,
100%.
and
Yeah.
doesn't always necessarily make him happy either. Because then sometimes you're super focused on making money, but maybe you don't have purpose, or maybe you don't have other aspects of your life where you're growing your garden, have time for friendships or have time for hobbies and those kinds of things too that can kind of burn a man out when you don't kind of have good balance,
Yeah.
you know?
One of the first things that we do when we bring a man into the program is just go, hey, there's 8 mountains in your life. We call them mountains because you're always feel like you're kind of climbing these things. There are things like, mind, body, career, companionship, hobbies and adventure, community or brotherhood, fatherhood, or, parenting, and what else? Soul. I think that's 8. And we just say, you're not going to, the cruel trick of life is you're not going to be able to balance all of those, but you do need to have, if you don't have kids, okay. If you're not married, okay. So companionship and parenting, maybe those aren't active mountains that, every man is climbing, but at some point, typically they come into the picture, and you have to figure out how to prioritize, balancing those different 8 mountains, because they're all sort of required to, have fulfillment or feel fulfillment. So a lot of times guys, they get married and then they get lost in the marriage. I'm sure that's true for women as well. Right. So none of what
Oh,
I'm
big
saying,
time. Yeah, it
this stuff
happens so
yeah,
much. Yeah, you do, you get totally lost in it.
yeah,
Sometimes you forget who you are completely.
yeah,
I wrote about it in my book. After my first marriage, I was like, "Who am I? How do I even like my eggs cooked?"
yeah, yeah. Right. Right. So it happens for both men and women, and it's really helpful for another man to come alongside, a guy who's maybe going through this kind of loss of self, and just say, "Hey, remember, she was attracted to the man that you once were, before you were married, right? And so if you
Yeah,
stopped being adventurous, you've kind of ceased with a lot of the hobbies that brought you joy. You sort of lost maybe your ambition to some degree, and now you're just trying to provide and play it safe. Now you've become somebody different than the woman, the man that she fell in love with,
yeah,
and that can kind of be a light bulb moment. And so then a guy will go, "Oh wow, I have to sort of hit the reset button a little bit here and rediscover that man that I once was, so that I can bring that energy and fulfillment back into the marriage and the family."
yeah, absolutely, and the women do this. I did the same thing. I remember at one point in my second marriage, I was like, "Oh, whoa, we're going down the wrong road here again," and I'm like, "Oh, no."
Hmm.
What can I do? Obviously, there's something about me. There's something I'm doing, because this is now the second time this is happening to me.
Yep.
What do I need to own in this
Yep.
relationship? And realizing that I had really lost a lot of myself along the way, and realizing I really had to step back into who I
Yeah.
was, before we got married, and get back to that place of that, I definitely have a little bit of a strong woman persona, but I can definitely get lost in fawning and servitude
Yeah.
and, being that, let me just carry the cross around the house. I'm just a martyr.
Mhm.
So, and I had to kind of take that off and go, okay, well, this is who I need to be. This is what we need to do. We need to get this back together. We need to put this thing back on the tracks. And I had to realize that there was a lot of self ownership in my marriage. There's a lot of ownership on my side of the tracks that needed to be cleaned up too.
Mhm.
It was like, if you need him to do something, you need to communicate that very clearly with him so that he can do that, because he's not a mind reader either, and a lot of times you get lost in the weeds of life and you can't even tell when you're getting into a behavior pattern that's not healthy for you. And I feel like your partner kind of needs to come alongside and say, hey, that's not healthy for you. Let's try something else. Let's not do that. Let's try this a different way. I do think that there's something in marriage that we have the opportunity in marriages to really help each other out and to be helpmates, and to really be in a partnership. But it takes radical ownership, and getting away from that place of fear, and getting into that place of just radical love, not just for yourself and for your partner. Like, I love you too much to let you act this way. I've said that to my kids, but I definitely feel that in the relationship, you get to that place too.
100%. I help a lot
Yeah.
of quote unquote nice guys. So the
Yeah.
nice guy syndrome is something that a lot of people are aware of now, but maybe some aren't. And so I'll just sort of define it. A nice guy is sort of a misnomer, because it turns out not to be so nice a lot of the times. But he's a guy that, is also, you could think of him as a pleaser who's trying not to rock the boat so that he can get the love and appreciation that he deeply desires. So a nice guy was taught to try and get the gold star when he was younger. We're
Mhm.
taught by primarily women teachers these days, and that's been the way for decades now, because we moved from an agricultural society where boys were being, kind of raised by their fathers, uncles, grandfathers out in the fields, working, a
Mhm.
little bit more exposure to men during the day. And then with the Industrial Revolution, things shifted and we started going to school. Men went to, factories and then offices. And so we're being raised by a lot of women teachers at school, and then a lot of, you know, moms at home doing a lot of the raising. And so the way that you kind of keep, kids and boys in check is you give them the gold star for doing a good job and following the rules. So you can
Mm.
imagine, what that does when they get into a relationship and you're logging hours and hours and hours, with this person. A man will a lot of times just naturally try and follow the rules, not make a mistake. And then what that ends up doing is they compromise themselves. They're scared to say no. They're scared to ask for what they want because they've learned to just try and follow the rules. So now they're following, not leading. And then the kind of repercussions of that are that they snap and they get angry because they feel like they've done so much for the other person and it's not being recognized. And they feel justified in lashing out. And then they look like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I thought you're this nice guy. No, you're actually acting super out of control and angry right now.
Right. I know a lot of women that take on that same
Sure.
role in their
Sure.
relationships. And so it's funny. It's like, that's really one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because I think that there's this crossover of information, because it's almost like we're dealing with, the women were raised the same way, but the same teachers
Yeah.
being the same rule
Yeah.
followers. So are we now getting into relationships without leadership?
That's right.
Are we on a ship with no captain?
That's right. So
Yeah.
we have to take extreme ownership and kind of assess, wait a minute, what is my role here? Do I need to be, saying no to certain things. So that's one of the things that we help guys do, is develop a bit of a system or algorithm for that. You know, if
Yeah.
I ask a guy what he stands for, I mean, he just generally won't have an answer. He goes off of his gut,
Yeah.
and I believe
Yeah.
those things that he stands for are actually in there. I believe that they're deep in there, but nobody kind of sets aside the time to go, what are my principles? What are my non-negotiables? But once you have those clear, it really helps with making decisions, because you can go, oh, wait a minute, that violates a non-negotiable in my life. I need to say no to that, or I need to stand for that. A lot of what I do is I say, you stand for something. Like boundaries, I think is a really, really popular concept in our culture that was developed, I want to say in the 70s, you know, by therapists, and the boundaries have obviously did wonders for a lot of people, and they're important. But when I'm coaching a man on how to be a leader, boundaries are not my favorite way of explaining boundaries. I sort of and here's why. Because boundaries, the context in which they were originated, are out of kind of the therapist's office, and a therapist is going to ask a lot of questions, get you to open up, share your feelings, things like that. Nothing wrong with that. But that, for a man, isn't always the most helpful thing. We were raised to kind of get coaching. The coach tells you how to hit the ball. The coach tells you how
Yeah.
to, throw the ball. The coach shows you how to, tighten up yeah, your stroke, whatever it is, right? And we actually like that as men, because we just want to do it right. We want to go out there
Yeah.
and see the results.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have 2 boys that are kinesthetic learners, and I don't think they would learn from therapy, talk therapy, the way that they
Y-
would learn from, some sort of more physical coaching,
Right, right.
That
So,
makes
so,
sense to
so,
me.
so there's nothing wrong with therapy, but if you're
Yeah.
looking to dramatically improve in a short amount of time, a lot of times you benefit from just having, a guy say, you're not doing it right. Here's a better way. Try this. Then they do it and they go, why have I been doing it the other way for so long? Well, you were just never taught. So now you
Yeah.
know, and does not feel better. Yeah. Oh, it turns out I didn't have to sit, and talk about my feelings for, 3 sessions. I just needed to be told what to do. Right.
Exactly, and it's the way we're wired, you're so right, we're men and women can tend to be wired a little differently, and I can see how sometimes it's so much easier just, can we cut to the chase and
Yeah.
you just show me how to do things the right way,
Yeah.
rather than, wandering through the stories of life in the
Yeah.
past,
So,
right?
so what I was going to say about boundaries is that sometimes boundaries get confusing for men, because of course we need boundaries. We have laws, we have rules. So there are things that there's consequences for, doing things that are not right, and there should be. But when you're leading in a relationship as a man, if you have a bunch of boundaries, um, it can just instill more kind of fear, uh, what I'll call kind of a fear-driven atmosphere. Hey, if you do
Yeah.
this, I'm gonna, walk out of the room or whatever. So there's a time and place for that. If you start yelling or whatever, I'm gonna walk out of the room. Okay, there's a time and place for that. But before that, I want guys to think about boundaries as principles. So principles are a little bit more positive. I say they should be sort of us oriented. So, if you're going to raise your voice and start yelling or whatever, that's not good. That's not good for the kids, right? But if you have a principle that is, uh, I bring emotional, physical, financial protection for my family. That's a great principle to have. Now you come in when the yelling, starts or whatever. You let cool things down, but you say, "Hey, look, um, you know, this is not something that I want for us, for our house, for our children. It's damaging, and so I want to take us to a new chapter or place where when we get, really heated, we, decide to take a timeout, whatever. And, it's always going to be no more than 20 minutes before we come back. And, whatever it is, the details are not important. But what I'm what I'm a really big fan of is a guy explaining why it's of benefit to her and the relationship and the family, and sort of standing for that thing instead of framing it as, I don't like it when you do that. It hurts me, or it makes me upset or whatever. And like, I'm just going to walk away. No, talk about why, if we do this, it has harmful repercussions, and I want to elevate us to the next level. That's leadership.
I love that, and that's coming from a place of safety for her
Yeah.
and safety for her children,
Yeah.
which is speaks to women on a very deep primal level.
Yeah.
You know, we deeply want to feel that our partner desperately and above all wants to keep us safe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hold me to the same standard too. Right. So that's kind of,
Yeah.
the thing I think that about principles that are a little bit more uh, designed for men, in the sense that, we as leaders, if we're trying to lead, a principle is something that's applicable to ourselves and others. Right. So we
Yeah.
we need to be held accountable as well for the same thing. Whereas I'm just saying, boundaries or whatever, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying, as a man, a boundary can feel a little bit like I'm trying to protect myself.
Yeah.
Right. And that doesn't feel
Yeah,
as
totally. I
masculine. It
can see
doesn't
how a
feel
man could feel
as,
threatened. Yeah, yeah, I
it
can
just
see how
doesn't
that
feel
that
quite.
word is threatening.
Yeah.
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't sound very loving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So you're working with men who are coming kind of from that place of, like, fear and avoidance in a relationship. You're working with guys that were kind of in that space
Yeah.
at one time,
Yeah.
and now, that from a female perspective, that kind of looks like stonewalling and silence. A lot of times when the guy's, like, on that side of, like, "Oh, I'm afraid, I'm gonna avoid."
Yeah.
This is going to start a fight, or this is uncomfortable. So, can you break down what's actually going on inside a man in those moments,
Yeah.
and how a woman could respond without taking on, more emotional
Sure.
work?
I just want to be
Yeah.
clear about the boundaries thing, because I,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that uh, the audience understands I'm fine with women having boundaries. I think
Yeah.
if a woman has boundaries in relationships, that's really important, and those should be honored. All I'm saying is that for men to sort of mirror that, the boundary game, I think creates a funky dynamic, and so
Totally. Yeah.
so
I
I think,
love
yeah.
Terry Cole's book, Boundary Boss. And for women who come from the codependent world, which, I definitely I think codependence was modeled to me. It was probably modeled to my mother. And definitely becoming aware of the fact that I'm a high functioning codependent, and reading Terry's book and kind of going through she'll have you do your list of things that are, absolutely, this is non negotiable for me, all of these things. And it comes from a place of principles, but we definitely have been using the word boundaries in that as terminology for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So back to your question, what's going on for
Yeah.
men is, at the root of it is typically shame.
Hmm.
Okay, so shame looks like, I'm not doing a good job. I'm not
Yeah.
good enough. I'm not a good husband.
Mhm.
I'm not getting the gold star.
Aw.
And
It's so true. Shame is such a dark, but very present emotion in our society. I feel like I don't know if it's ever been more prevalent. I think that's why we're dealing with so many mental health issues, like the depression and the addiction that our society is dealing with right now. It seems like even the eating addictions and all of those things seem to really come from a place of shame.
yep. So the dead
Yeah.
giveaway that shame is at the root of things is, shame wants to isolate. So you talk about stonewalling or avoiding, pulling away. I see this a lot, right? Somebody keeps
Yeah.
pulling away, somebody keeps avoiding, or they're stonewalling. Stonewalling can be a necessary tactic if you're dealing with somebody who's narcissistic, whatever. There's a time and place for stonewall. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are misdiagnosing others as narcissistic um, in our society, because it's such a buzzword on social media. And I think it's kind of I think it's sad. So I really hold guys accountable to that. I say, don't, don't label, don't diagnose people as being,
Right.
this or that. That's all that's doing is kind of offloading your responsibility to
That's
change
right.
and, up level. And even if they are a narcissist, how are you going to hold yourself responsible to do the healthy thing in the midst of, their unhealthy behavior? So
That's right.
shame causes us to want to isolate,
Yeah.
and we're going to withdraw. We're going to avoid. We're going to, stonewall. We're going to be silent. And I know for me, I remember the feeling of, I just don't want to do anything wrong again.
Mm.
And so I'm just not going to do anything.
It's so sad to me that there's like this massive communication breakdown in so many marriages, because marriage should be this like really powerful educational tool where you really get to learn who you are, expand your understanding of yourself and your partner. I think. I think marriage has a tremendous potential, but without with shame and then just a lack of communication or understanding, empathy,
Hmm.
for what our partners are feeling,
Hmm.
it can really, digress into something that's just a yucky, ugly power play.
Hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I would say it's linked to, of course, the antidote is, forgiveness and reconciliation. So
Yeah.
you have to believe that you're forgiven. I see a lot of people who don't want to forgive themselves, and they don't want to forgive others, and they certainly don't know how to reconcile. And so that's another thing that we teach men how to do, is to do reconciliation properly. And one of the most common mistakes I see with men in terms of, when they make a mistake, they'll kind of go back to her and they'll apologize, but then they'll justify,
Mm.
and they'll start going into why they did it. And that's just not actually an apology at the end of the day, right? It's just an
Right.
explanation, but I kind of
Right.
Trojan
We
horsed you
women,
with a,
we want
with
just
a,
you own it and just say, "I'm sorry, I'm owning this behavior. I
yeah,
did it. I'm
yeah.
sorry, and I'm
It
gonna
must have
own
felt
exactly
terrible.
what I did."
Yeah, it must have felt
Yeah.
terrible. I see
Yeah.
this now.
Yeah.
I want to make I'm going to make the changes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you watch, and I want to be held
Yeah.
accountable to it. And here's the
Yeah.
plan, right? And
Yeah.
that kind of clean communication is very rare, I think, in relationship.
Yes. Yes, I think there's a lot of maturity that has to come, in order to work through difficult things and deeply, like, lean into your communication skills and your empathy and your emotional IQ. I think that if you really wanna make marriage work, whether it's in a good place or a not so good place, coming from that place of using your emotional IQ to really read what's happening, having a deeper understanding of what root causes are, like
Hmm.
shame, if usually if there's a bad behavior, yeah, you're right. It's usually shame that there's this underlying, if there's a recurring bad behavior, it's usually comes from this place of like, oh, well, I suck and I'll never do this right anyway. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna change 'cause I'm never gonna be able to do it better,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's not true, guys. You can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. You
Yeah.
can do it better. Tell yourself you love yourself, then you love your partner enough,
Yeah.
and then it's amazing what you can do when you come from a place of love.
That's right. And,
Yeah.
today, so I was running we do group calls twice a week. And today I was running a call, and there was a man who had a big blow up. His marriage has actually been going really quite well, but there was a big event in the past that created a lot of hurt and trauma, and there was reconciliation that happened. But then there's this underlying, what we call a lion, uh, which was in this case, it was a shame based lion. So a lie that, hey, I'm just not good enough when it comes to my career or, being, a husband or whatever. And so there was something that she said. She was actually doing some backseat driving,
Oh,
and he just lashed out and he yelled at her, and he shouldn't have. And that
huh?
was wrong. And he lost his cool. And it was all linked to just this belief that he's just not good enough. And it took him, and this is not like how it's supposed to be, but I'm just being honest, took him a whole month to come to this realization that he is responsible for paying attention to those lies, seeing through those lies. He's
Yeah.
responsible. So she can say whatever. She can yell at him. She can blame him. She can, she's in her own fear when she's backseat driving. She's just fearing in her own way of something, and her unhealthy behaviors, of controlling and, demanding are just coming out from her own fear. Right. And so
Yeah.
now he's starting to see, oh, I just took cues from a lie, by yelling at her. And I didn't have to do that. And I just say it's so simple. I'm just saying this and walking you through this and your
Yeah.
audience through this because it took him a whole month of wringing his hands, of being upset, of kind of being in a little bit of this grudge mode. And it was a process for him. But it was only like this past weekend where he had this aha moment, this realization, like, I am really just what we call below the line. I'm operating in my fear. I'm living, I'm taking action according to this false belief that I have about myself, that I'm bad, I'm not good. I'm a bad person. And it's remarkable when you see through that lie and you actually believe the truth, which is you're forgiven and like, you're good. Like you are
Yeah.
loved if you so choose to receive the love.
Yes.
Man, now somebody could be yelling in your face and you just be like, man, are you having a bad day?
Yeah. Can I get you a sandwich? Are you
Yeah, yeah,
hungry? What's
right. And that's the best feeling in the world. That's the best feeling in the world when you used to redline, right, and react, and you can just stay calm, cool, and collected, and not be
Yeah.
rattled by how
Yeah.
somebody else is feeling. And that's really our
Y
goal. And in the program I run, the Lion's Den, is to be, that loving masculine leader who's responding but not reacting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's your ideal partner can get to that place of deep self-realization, but
Yes.
we live in a society of, entertainment and avoidance of the deep work that we need to be doing as
Right.
human beings, which is, like, exploring our inner workings and why do I do those things, why do I think that way, there's a lot of, stories that we have about ourselves that aren't even true,
Mhm.
they're
Yes.
that we carry with us for no reason at all.
That's right.
And it's our choice to carry those stories with us or we can let them go.
Yeah.
We can say, poof, you're gone,
Yeah.
out of here.
Yeah.
Let it go and just love yourself and be radically honest with yourself in the moment that you're in. Don't be in another moment. Don't be in a past moment, but like being awesomely present, like our girl Ocean Ramsey, who's
Yeah.
just so present,
Yeah.
and full of love when she's with those sharks. This is the documentary, The Shark Whisperer.
Yeah.
Bart had told me to watch it, and it's just so good. If you haven't seen it, girls, you should definitely check this one out. It's worth a watch. But the way, she's showing up you don't show up in the water with no cage with an apex predator that's 20 feet long
Mm.
and have any other thoughts in your mind other than being in that very present moment
Mhm.
with that being. And she's there just in this place of like just peace and awe and love. And it kind of makes me wish I could show up in my life in that way at all times,
Mhm.
to be able to show up with all beings, with all people, with be able to show up with my children in that way, to be able to show up with my husband in that way, where you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
you're majestic and
Yeah.
I love you. I want to understand you.
Yeah.
That seems like where she's at.
Absolutely. It reminds me of Neo in the Matrix. It's like
Yeah.
seeing things from a different perspective than everyone else. And so we have this framework that I just love that I'll share that, you know, I can't take credit for, but I learned some time ago, which is being above the line or below the line. And to be above the line is in love and abundance, and to be below the line is in fear or scarcity. And so that's a really easy way to check in with yourself and with a man. Because, if you ask, so in general, you want to just ask a man what he thinks about something, not what he feels about something. He really won't be able
Okay.
to tell you how he feels most of the time, but he'll be able to tell you what he thinks. So that's a tip for,
I
your
love that.
ladies.
Thank you.
Yes.
Whatever we can learn to communicate with our partners more efficiently.
Yeah.
Because I think staying in marriage is so beneficial for family structure, for society as a whole.
Yeah.
I think the divorce model is so devastating for society, and I think whatever we can do to be able to show up and communicate with our partners, our husbands, more efficiently in a way that we can save
Yeah.
our marriages for our children and for our spouses, I think they need us too.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So we have this
Yeah.
framework that's like draw a horizontal line in your mind. And yeah, above the line is love and abundance. Below is fear and scarcity. And the depths that you can go down into that fear and scarcity, you can really plumb the depths. And the further you get down, the more fear you're experiencing and the more you're going to behave like that wounded animal, that we've all
Mhm.
probably encountered the wounded bird or the wounded animal. And we're trying to kind of maybe help it. We've got the towel. We're going to kind of get it and rescue it. And it's doing is just wanting to claw at us and get us away because it's scared as all get out. And that's once you have this framework, you start to realize the reason I'm acting like such a-hole right now is because I'm so actually in my fear. And so it's a framework, really simple binary framework that helps guys realize the reason they're behaving that way is because they're scared of the unknown or this false belief that they're a loser, they're an idiot, they're a total reject, a misfit, they're unattractive, life has been unfair to them. There's all these kind of different, what we call lions that are really helpful in uh, getting guys to see that they're just believing something that is not true about themselves. And that's why so they need to kind of change that core belief. So zooming up to Ocean Ramsey level, when she's with the sharks, she is way above the line. She is in her love and abundance. She is like, this is my true self being in the water with these sharks. This is me operating at my highest self. That's where we want to be. And this is, as I've practiced this framework, what's so cool is you realize you can get higher and higher and higher. And I almost call it like God's perspective. Whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe is fine, by me. But when I do I do a special kind of journaling where I will write a question to God, and then I'll just write it in the first person as though God is writing directly to me using, hey, Bart, da, 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 da. And that is the quickest way for me to get a totally above the line perspective on what's going on. And it is mind blowing and so cool to me how we can be in the same situation, but if we use a slightly different tool, we can get a totally different perspective on it that changes our entire sort of way of seeing it, feeling about it in, a matter of minutes. And so
Yeah,
that
I
is
love that.
right. That's really what we're trying to do uh, in the Lion's Den, and it's named, aptly named because if you know the story of like in the Bible, the Lion's Den, right? It was a story about a man who, uh, Daniel, who was, thrown into a lion's den to get eaten. And the next morning he wasn't, and he was unharmed, and the lions were just there chilling. And, God had protected him, but he had had tremendous faith, and he had just known, like, he was going to be fine. And I think
Yeah.
if we could know we're going to be fine, man, and
Yes.
that's what Ocean Ramsey is experiencing.
Yeah.
She knows
Yeah.
ahead of time she's
She
going to be
knows.
fine. She just knows.
Yes. Yeah, she's in a place of knowing that
Yeah,
she is going to be fine in that water. There's no doubt in her mind, not in one cell of her body, and it's basically I think she must be putting off that because sharks can read, like, the magnetic field. I mean,
100%.
she must
Yeah.
be putting off in her magnetic field this, they can probably feel her full vibration in that place of love and
Absolutely.
knowing
Yes.
that she's fine.
Fears the unknown. Fears just
Yeah.
the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, and it's unfortunate that people in our society are allowing it to drive so much of their lives right now, it's controlling, fear is dominating, a lot of human behavior right now, and it really doesn't need to be,
Mhm.
we could rise above that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my book, The Manager, moving on here
Yeah.
to another, in my book, The Manager, I talk a lot about invisible systems that women run within the household, like calendars and kid schedules and emotional temperature checks, and even like remembering birthdays. Oh, did you text your great grandma? It's her birthday today.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things. So do you think that men realize that these systems exist? It's such a good question because I often like, do you guys first of all, do you realize they exist at all? And then how are you able to help men kind of plug into these systems in a leadership way, not just like in a helping
Yeah.
out kind of way,
Yeah.
but from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. What we uh, teach men to do is move beyond how can I help? Certainly move
Yeah.
beyond coming home and just flopping on the couch and watching Netflix or whatever, right? So maybe you're a man who is kind of like, hey, what should I do? Right? So that is sort of just creating more work sometimes for her because now she's got to delegate stuff to you. And it's not that that's like the
Yeah.
worst thing in the world, somebody trying to be
But it's not the
helpful, but it's not
best.
the
It's not
best,
the
right?
best. No, we have decision fatigue. We don't wanna make all of the
Right.
decisions all of the time.
Right. What we teach guys to do is to be more proactive. So do you have a plan for the week? Do you have a
I love
plan for the weekend? Do you have that to-do list that you actually have just not been getting to forever? Start systematizing those things like you would at work and then putting them in front of her. So Sunday night, you should be putting together some sort of a plan for the week. Here are the things, here are the events, the things that I know I have to do. And you have to protect some things. Like if you like one of the things that's important to you is going to the gym, you have to say, I'm going to the gym
Yeah.
and I'm not
Well,
moving
it's
that.
important,
Right.
and it
Like,
really I get it. I
right.
have a husband that if he doesn't go to the gym, it's just not good for anybody. It's like
r-
he needs that to
Right.
he really does. He needs it. It's like, not taking your dog out for a walk. It's like the guy's gonna be a basket case if you don't take him out, so let him go to the gym. He needs it.
That's right. That's right. Well,
Yeah.
you'd be, surprised at how many guys would say at the drop of a hat, okay, I'll go do that thing you want me to do, instead of, taking care of themselves. And then they find themselves getting, but to get back to the core question here, what we want guys to do is to take time on Sunday to kind of plan the week and then share that with her so that
I
there's
love
good
that.
communication. And then going into the weekend, it's like, hey, here's the game plan for the weekend. Now, this is not to be confused with controlling. So what we say is you're putting together a plan for the sake of collaboration and communication. Hey, what do you think of this plan, this itinerary, whatever? And then she gets to go, oh, I don't like this or that. And that's where you
Yeah, or
take
like,
her
"We can't do that night because 'cause we've got this,"
right,
right?
right. And some women love
Yeah.
to do the planning and they like to keep the calendar right. So this isn't necessarily for everyone, but even if it's a woman or a wife or a girlfriend or whatever who likes to do the planning, I still encourage a guy to exercise this muscle, and not just kind of rest on his laurels. And then it's an opportunity for you to cooperate and collaborate, right? So she goes, I hate it. And you use your decision-making algorithm where you kind of go, I know that sounds really robotic, but I promise you it's just for guys, it's not that it doesn't feel
I
that way.
get
It's
it.
just kind of like it's like the gym thing. It's like she's asking me to not go to the gym. Well, this is an opportunity for me to say no, to say, no, I'm going to go to the gym. This is what I
Yeah.
need. Right. And so you have to be able to do that. And she has to be able to
Yeah.
honor that. Right. As long
Yeah.
as it's not like obsessive or, it's not ludicrous or whatever. You've got to be able to protect those things. So that's what I would say we kind of teach guys to do. Do guys, um, execute flawlessly? No, it's really a pain in the butt to do planning, and they get lazy, and then they have to be reminded to get back on kind of the planning horse, right?
I'm wondering, as technology evolves, I saw this cool thing and it's like this frame that you can actually put your it's like a digital frame.
Yeah.
So it looks like a picture
Oh, yeah.
frame, but it's actually like a screen and you can upload your calendar up
Yeah.
onto it. And I'm thinking, how is technology going to enhance our ability to collaborate on the calendar? And will technology allow men to be when everything's actually like laid
Yeah.
out? Because so much of what a woman does is like it's all in our heads,
Yeah.
so, like, how would you know, you know? Honestly, how would he
Yeah.
know all of the things that she's doing? Because she's not, like
Yeah.
he's not seeing that,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. So maybe as we evolve with technology, we can evolve in our ability to collaborate on the calendar and the weekly. I love that. I think that's actually really cool. I'm gonna try that with Brendan. Say, hey, buddy, will you help me put together your week,
Yeah.
and then let's work on it together and figure this out because I love that. I would love to have that collaboration.
Yeah. I think you just as a man, you have to it does come down to having those kinda handful of principles that you can reference back to because it's really easy to turn these types of things into power struggles. And so
Mhm.
this what I would say, we call them I am statements. And these principles are really things that, again, are sort of non-negotiable. So if your wife says, hey, I want to change the color of the curtains to a color that you don't like, well, I want you to run the this situation. This is an easy one, right? This is we can get more
Yeah.
kind of tricky or whatever. But I want to change the color of the drapes to from blue to pink. I remember personally, I'm embarrassed to say this. I got into a huge fight, with my wife over the flavor of naan that we were going to have at the Indian restaurant. Like how stupid, but it wasn't about the naan,
Obviously.
right? It wasn't about the naan at all. It was about the ongoing power struggle that we were having. And so as a man, if I know like this isn't really bumping up against one of my non-negotiables, it's bumping up against a fear and insecurity that I have that I'm, being walked over, I'm weak or whatever. Okay, my responsibility to start figuring out how I need to take, my power back, my empowerment
Yeah.
back, right? But this fight about the non or the curtains or whatever, this isn't worth fighting about. I can say my preference. I'd rather have, the plain naan than the garlic naan. Well, I really want to have garlic. Great. Let's do the garlic.
Right?
You know? Like it just doesn't matter. And then I can come back around and address the real issue at some point when I'm above the line.
Right, totally, and it's getting that place of, like, self-realization,
Yes.
what's motivating this reaction,
That's right.
is obviously it's not the flavor it can't be the flavor of the naan unless you're, like, allergic to garlic or something, and
No,
she's just being mean.
it's not about how to load the dishwasher. It's never about
No.
the right way to load the dishwasher.
No, no, totally, yeah, you're right, there's this yeah, always more about the existing power, struggle that's underlying in the relationship because you gotta show up for yourself, you have to advocate for yourself in a relationship, and you're allowed to be you. I
Mhm.
think that was the biggest thing that I've learned in the last 3 years of marriage is that I can step into a relationship, I can be married, and I can still be fully myself. I can be fully Aimee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be someone else. I don't have to I can still have preferences. I can still wanna go do things.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanna go to this yoga class yep, it's this night. I wanna go. I'm gonna figure out if I need to get a nanny or if you wanna watch the kids that night, but I wanna go do
Yeah.
this. It's not shouldn't be a deal breaker for him whether I go or not, you
Right.
know? And it's like, can we have enough mutual respect for each other that we can be together, but also be our full selves
Yeah.
so that we're not compromising who we are as individuals in
Right.
a relationship?
Right.
I think that when you start compromising yourself, that's when the power struggle happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like we have to, women, the wife needs to allow the husband to do what he needs to do and have enough empathy and emotional IQ to go, oh, yeah, yes, you do need to go to the gym. My husband walked in the door at five
Yeah.
o'clock last night. He'd been at the office all day. He looked at me and he goes, I got to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, you
Yeah.
do. Bye bye. I'll
Yeah.
see you in 2 hours.
It's tricky. There's so many variables. There's so many, things going on in a relationship. We bring baggage in. We, have fears. What is
Uh,
our non-negotiables? People haven't done a lot of the work that they need to do to have the self-awareness they need to show up and be healthy in relationship, and they haven't worked on non-negotiables. They haven't worked on what's really my purpose, what is my plan. And I'm speaking more for men, because
yeah.
that's my area. But for
Yeah.
men, so much of masculinity is deciding ahead of time how you're going to respond in the midst of adversity. So what makes
Yeah.
a Navy SEAL masculine? Yeah, at face value or whatever, it's, a lot of times muscles and machine guns and mustaches. But really, I think masculinity is better defined as deciding ahead of time how you're going to show up in the midst of adversity. And so,
Yeah.
if you decide the real mark of masculinity for, say, like a Navy SEAL is we're going to complete the mission no matter what.
Yeah.
That's really all that matters as a Navy SEAL, for
So-
example. It's like if you get to the mission and things don't go your way and you're like, "Yeah, we just don't really feel like doing this anymore." That's that's not
Yeah.
that's not that masculine energy that we're talking about. And so
Yeah.
I just call that out to say the reason why we have this program is because a lot of guys have not taken the time to decide how they're going to show up when adversity strikes. You kind of have to
Yeah.
go into the cabin in the woods a little bit and do some work on
Yeah.
deciding now how you're going to respond in the future. And so
Yeah.
that's really what we're doing. And I think women, at least the women that, are on the kind of receiving end of the work that these guys are doing are like, hallelujah, thank you for doing this work, because they have felt like they're leading the relationship emotionally. They've felt like they're, just leading at home.
Yeah. And it's nice because I think that might be a big part of what we've lost in the
Mhm.
last 100 years, minimum, maybe more like 150. But yeah, as the world has changed with the industrial revolutions, we definitely have lost. The domestic sphere has become predominantly managed by the female, which is really what my book is about, is like, man, we've taken on all this extra work. Why are we doing this?
I think it's been highlighted by this shift of women being empowered to really earn as much, if not more, than men. So long gone are the days of, you know, and I know it can always be better, but
Yeah.
with social media, a woman can get on social media, and it doesn't matter that she's maybe not necessarily making as much as her husband, but she can, in within the span of 30 seconds, see a woman out there crushing it on social media, and not just kind of crushing it. I mean, making like $1 million a month, right? And that is very empowering on one hand, but it's also done something interesting for men because, again, going back to, I think what we talked about in the beginning was kind of like men's plan for marriage is like provide and make sure nobody dies. So it's that provider protector. So whether men like it or not, their perceived value has kind of gone down over the course of the last, couple of decades. So if you're just showing up, providing and protecting, that is really not enough for a lot of women. Women are going, I could go out and provide for myself and this
Mhm.
family. And some women are doing that, for their families.
Yeah.
They're out earning
Yeah.
their husbands. And protection wise, we really don't have to be at home, sitting there with a shotgun across our lap anymore, because we have the systems in place, provided by the municipalities to protect ourselves. So then it's like, what are women looking for from a man if it's not as much the providing? This isn't true. It's like a man needs to keep providing, right? Like that's important. And so I'm not saying that a man needs to not do that or whatever, and then it's not valued. It is, but the weight that once carried, that's not there as much anymore. And so women are going, you need to bring another level of leadership to the relationship, and that looks like, emotional connectivity, safety, relational maturity, leadership, all of these things that we were never taught how to do
Right.
really well.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that is the big shift. That really is. I think that's one of the things in my book. I feel like, women were just sort of unconsciously, subconsciously doing all of this leadership inside the domestic world. Meanwhile, they're working a job just like a man does now. And then the man would show up to the house and just expect that, oh, well, I worked, so
Yeah.
you got everything else,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, well, that model
The
died.
model died.
So now how do we create a new world, a new way of having this marriage, this relationship, this partnership where we can grow together as two individual people, where we actually show up for each other in an emotional way, but also in the physical. I mean, when you have small children, it's very much like show up for me in a very physical way with these kids, because there's a lot of physical work with small children. And even, like, teenagers, I feel like my husband has really found his way with the boys, in coaching baseball and taking them to their hitting coach and, creating sort of, a rhythm for those boys, when they need that male role model, and he's definitely stepping in to model that male for them. And I'm very grateful for that, and I think that, it's nice when I think he likes to hear that I'm grateful for that. I think practicing gratitude in your relationship, even if you just take like a minute a day and just say in 60 seconds, this is what I'm grateful for with you today. This is just coming from a place of gratitude.
I just want to remark on that. Men don't realize how little time intimacy can take. If they know the right things to do and they do them, it's kind of like that. I say that 80-20 rule applies to relationship as well. I think it's really interesting that the love languages, there happens to be 5 love languages. Are you familiar with the love languages?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Right.
Yeah.
So the
Service.
80-20 rule, the
Yep.
80-20 rule, the Pareto principle is there's sort of 20% of the actions will net you 80% of the results that you're looking for. Right. And
Uh-huh.
so it's really important to identify those 20% actions that you could be taking, because that will just totally maximize your effectiveness and your time. Business is a really easy lens by which to look through this. It's like if there's 100 marketing tactics that I could be doing, if I know, the 20 tactics that are the most effective, I'm going to get 80% of the results. And I think that in relationship, a lot of times what guys don't realize is these love languages, there's 5 of them. And so if you know your partner's love language, and for example, it's physical touch, and you just are always buying gifts or setting up, trips, or whatever, quality time. A lot of times, maybe guys not doing any of them very well. But if you're, doing some of these others, because that's what you think love looks like, you're not giving the physical touch, you're not going to get the same type of results. Whereas if it's physical touch, you come home and you really practice that with her, because love is a practice.
Heck
It's
yeah.
not
Yeah,
a
rub her
it's
feet. If she likes
yeah,
physical touch,
right?
you pick up her feet, rub her feet while you're
Boom.
watching TV.
Boom.
Boom.
Now, yes, now you are doing the 80/20 rule, and you're being effective and efficient in the limited time that you have. I work with a lot of business owners, executives who are really busy. Wouldn't you like to know just the most effective things that you could be doing so as to
Yes.
create intimacy in the limited time that you have? It's certainly not
Yes.
scrolling on social media, sitting next to each other, as kind of fun as that can be at times. You really, if
Oh.
you want to grow the relationship, you need to know the things that, are really going to net the types of results that you want, which is, guys want they want emotional intimacy, but they also want the physical intimacy. And they don't
True.
realize how connected those two things are. And so if a woman is not feeling the emotional intimacy and connection, she's not going to she ain't going to get excited about having physical intimacy.
And it's
And
in
the
the
guy's
man's
going,
best
"What's wrong?"
interest to approach this, like, I
Yes.
think, and in my book, I approached the household and this whole thing in a very I took a business take on it. If I was the CEO of this business,
Yeah.
which happens to be this household, what do the systems look like? But a lot of times I'm actually writing a chapter in my new book, and it's called Moving the Needle. And it's like,
Mm.
what does moving the needle look like to you? And it's like, you choose the things that move the needle. So you need to figure out what your wife's love language is, and then do that thing every day, and then you're gonna move that needle in your favor.
Amen. Exactly. Exactly. And you know what? When you think about it, it's so cool when you start just realizing these things, because, like, as a man, because it takes the mystery out of it, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I can do this. Like, I just
Super
need
simple.
a little bit of."
Men think
Yeah.
we're very complicated creatures. We're really not that
Right.
complicated. You just gotta figure out exactly figure out what exactly we need. Do I need I love words of affirmation.
Mhm.
So for me, it's like, you don't need to buy me super anything expensive, but a couple times a year, can you write me a really sappy card where
Yeah.
you just, like, lay it all out there for me? That's beautiful for me. I'm like, that's what I need. That words of affirmation are my love language. And it's like, just, I know it's simple and it sounds corny and you might not get it, but, like, I really had to tell my husband, like, I need you
Yeah.
to write me a really, really sappy card for Valentine's Day
Yeah.
and for my birthday.
Yeah.
And if you can do that for me, we're so good. And he's like, really? That's all you need? I'm like, yeah, like, that's really what I need.
I love
That's,
that.
you know?
We had a guy, reminds me, we had a guy we still do, in the membership, who we do these group calls, and we were talking about this very thing. And he we said, what is your wife's love language? And he said, physical touch. And we said, well, how often are you touching her? And he's like, really not often. And I'm like, and I said, well, hey, let's just go around the room real quick here and just kind of check in. How often do you guys touch your wife? Slap her on the butt, or whatever it is, while you're
Right?
making dinner. I'm not talking about in the bedroom or whatever, but
Yeah.
just right. And, like, almost every guy is like, oh, I'm slapping that all the time, right? And he just had no idea that other men were like, essentially groping their wives, and didn't,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, his childhood, he didn't experience that with his parents. And so, despite even knowing that his wife wanted physical touch, he didn't feel comfortable doing it. And so he wasn't doing it. But then when he heard all these other guys are doing it all the time, it made him
Yeah.
realize, oh, wow, like, I need to be doing this. And I think
Yeah.
that's sort of
Come up and rub her shoulders while she's in the kitchen.
right.
Kiss her on the neck.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It's amazing what one quick little gesture that would probably take 10 seconds out of your life
Yeah.
will do for the woman who's in your house. We don't wanna be forgotten, you
Yeah.
know? We really wanna still feel like valuable members of the household team, and I think that's, by speaking our love language, just a few moments a day, you can really, water that plant.
Yes.
Take care of her.
The biggest thing I'll just say really quick is I feel like that guys struggle with is making her feel heard. We are really used to defending and getting others to see our point. A lot of times in business, you're rewarded for that. You've got to kind of stand your ground, things like that. And when we get into a marriage relationship, it's really tempting to just want to defend, or sometimes just shut down, but defensiveness is really, really common because you're just like, it so often feels like she's coming at you with, no, that's just not true. And so you want to defend. But when you do that, then she doesn't feel heard. And
That's
if she
right.
doesn't feel heard, she doesn't feel seen. She doesn't feel seen. She doesn't feel known. She doesn't feel known. She doesn't feel loved. Right. And
Yeah,
so
and she doesn't feel
she doesn't
safe.
feel safe. And then she starts to
Yeah.
become more masculine, or what we call the fearing masculine. She gets more controlling or commanding,
Mhm.
demanding. She doesn't want to be that way. But she
Uh-uh.
feels like you're bringing this sort of unpredictable energy that's sort of fear driven. You don't look like a strong man when you're defending yourself when she's trying to express how she feels. You look like you're incapable of sort of handling her emotions. And over the course of time, her trust in you being that emotional safe space or that rock kind of erodes. And she's like, I want to go find somebody who does want to listen to me, who does want to
Right.
make me feel heard.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's really easy to just listen. All a guy has
Not
to do
for a
is just
guy.
go, "Oh, babe, I hear you. I will work on that."
It seems like it, but remember, it's attached to, am I doing a good job or not? And that's why
Right.
you
Oh,
get
so it goes
these
back to the
reactions. It
shame.
goes back to the shame. It goes back to the, I'm a failure here,
Yeah.
and
Inadequacy.
I'm inadequate, and my own wife doesn't think that I'm doing a good job. But it's
Yeah.
attached to all sorts of other stuff, and that is not what she's saying. Even when she's sometimes saying kind of nasty things, if you have this awareness, you can go, well, she's just feeling really scared right now. And
Yeah.
you can
Yeah. She
not
needs
sort of
you. She
feed
just
into the
needs you to
cycle.
be
She
like,
needs
"I
you
got
to
you,
have the
babe."
space, create the space,
Yeah.
hear her, not defend, and then connect with her.
Yes. Yeah, use it as an opportunity for connection instead of stonewalling or
100%.
avoiding.
I always say,
Yes.
let's, turn these into intimacy building moments where you're ending it with, can I give you a hug, or can we talk about this more, on the sofa with a glass of wine? Could we go on a walk? What
Right.
can we do? So we can train the relationship so we can have difficult conversations and then go right into intimacy instead of, parting ways and going into a different room. But that
Yeah, because
requires that you
in the
confront your
long run,
fear.
we're on the same
Right.
team, right?
Right.
We're on the same team. It's like the big thing for me, I think, the big turning point in my marriage was when I realized that we were on the same team.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, what's good for you is good for me.
Mm.
What's good for me is good for you. We're on the same team. And it's once you start acting that way, it's you are allowing yourself to build deeper intimacy and deeper connection with your partner rather than
The unfairness
yeah.
melts away a bit
Yes.
because marriage is
Y
unfair, you know?
yeah.
There's so many, if you're seeing it through that lens, I mean,
Oh,
it's always gonna feel
yeah.
unfair.
Absolutely, but if you're coming from a place of, like, because I think that the new marriage, marriage in the new world, in the 4th industrial revolution, marriage that's gonna work is gonna be a marriage that's based on, equality and, partnership true partnership, and being, the just taking that power struggle completely out of the relationship and coming as 2 very whole people that both feel very lovable and very loved, and coming really as being on the same team. Because now I feel like men and women we all have the same jobs to do, we're all working and we all have these kids to care for at the same time. If you have children and
Yeah.
you're married, there's this dual, ownership
Yeah.
of, bringing in the income for the household and then also caring for the littles
Yeah.
in your household, and the domestic work that comes along with it, which I do think will technology is going to alleviate a lot of the domestic work for us in the next 5
Yeah.
years. You know, I look at my kids and my kids probably think I'm preachy, but I'll be doing the dishes and I'll go, "Guess what? In like 5 years, I'll have a robot doing these dishes and I'll be in the other room eating dessert with you guys," you know? And it's
I know,
I
it's
just
crazy.
wonder
I say the
how
same types of
having,
things, yeah.
not losing the domestic, like, mundane tasks is gonna affect relationships also
Mhm.
in the future,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Oh, yeah,
When
it's gonna be a whole new world, and I'm not sure it's going to be better, um, but it's coming regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, AI is very much here. It's, it's growing at an exponential rate,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting time to be a human. I just feel like, within our relationships, the male, the husband-wife relationship, is at a point of evolution, I think, where there's radical ownership on the male side and radical ownership on the female side of,
Mhm.
okay, what's working, what's not working, how can we do this better than our parents did it?
Yeah,
How can we do this better?
yeah. One of the things that I'll just say I see in men over and over again is that they're not asking for what they want or really aware of what they want. Their
Yeah.
plan again is to just, kind of climb the ladder or grow the business, but it's really not being communicated to her what they want, at kind of like kind of micro or personal level, and then also at a macro level. And there's a great saying, man makes plans and God laughs, right? So there's this element of, um, whatever we sort of plan will probably change, but that tends to then uh, discourage a man. A lot of times they'll just go, what's the point? I'm not going to plan. I'm just going to kind of go along with, the best I can do. But I think that we benefit from challenging ourselves to come up with a plan and a vision and then communicating that to others and getting in the habit of saying what I want in relationship. And then also being okay with knowing I'm not going to always get it. So I encourage guys to say, like, I want more, I want more sex or I want more physical intimacy. If you don't ask for it, you never really get to, like, why is it being withheld? Right.
Sure.
And
I mean,
so
how would she know if he doesn't
how
communicate
would
it
you,
with
right?
her? Right?
And guys get
Yeah.
caught in the cycle of just, well, she just doesn't want it and I'm rejected and it doesn't feel good to get rejected. And so I'm
No.
just not going to ask anymore. Now you're just in a loveless or kind of ships in the night scenario. And so I think that guys need to get comfortable having desires and then expressing those desires. A guy asked me a couple weeks ago, what's the number one thing you've learned in coaching men over the last, few years? And I immediately said, embracing the plan B. I'm a former kind of screenwriter, worked in Hollywood for years. And I love the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's story structure that's used by Disney and all sorts of, films for that matter. And one of the things that I learned about story is that you've got a protagonist that has a want, but about midway through the film, they realize they're not going to get what they want until they get what they need first. So if you look at protagonists like Luke Skywalker, he wanted to go fly in the rebellion, be kind of a pilot. He didn't want to learn about the ways of the Force, but that was the plan kind of B that was forced upon him, or that he had to decide. He opted into ultimately. And then it was after learning the ways of the Force that enabled him to be a great pilot and, blow up the Death Star by the end of the movie. And I think that as men, it's okay to have desires. We need to have it's not okay. It's good to have desires. It's good to have a plan, but then we can also count on the plan not going according to plan and then having to adapt and be okay with the plan B and then sort of just leaning into that. And I think
Yeah.
that in a way is like life mastery. And what we're talking about is the plan B is really unknown. It's rife with like what's around the corner. who's that adversary? What skills do I need to learn to get past this next obstacle? And that's really what we're, tasked with, I think, as
Yeah,
men, in order to be successful. And so, anyway, it's something that I love about the work that we're doing in the Lion's
totally.
Den.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we call it adjust and conquer in our
Mm,
house, and we use it in business too, but we've definitely had to use adjust and conquer in our marriage also.
mm,
But adjust and conquer is like, okay, what's working, what's not working.
yeah.
It's also in my book. And I love the idea of strategic action plans that we use in business, but I do think husband and wives should sit down and say, this is a strategic action plan. Like maybe we want to buy an investment property this year. That's something we wanna
Yeah.
do. How we should sit down together actually and write it down. Brendan and I were in a really good habit of doing vision boards together every year,
Mm,
and we would put our vision boards up in our closet, and then we look at them all year long, and it's kind of amazing when you go back to our vision boards and see the things that actually came to us, like the exact identical things that were on the vision board. But
wow.
I think sharing collective vision for what you want, as individuals, and also together.
Together. Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
sometimes putting
Yeah.
together a vision board, let her put together one, let him put
Yeah.
together one. And it's kind of nice to see where you guys overlap
That's
too.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like when you're on the same team, when you're in the marriage with someone, it's if I can see what he wants, I can help that make that happen too, and vice versa,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I think what holds a lot of people back from doing that is just it's going to get rejected. She's not going to like that. She's not going to. Guys will tell themselves stories before they ever even think about putting pen to paper or communicating. They'll just, oh, she won't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you never know until you ask her,
Right.
"Hey, babe, would you
Right.
wanna do a vision board with me?
Yeah.
Hey, babe, would you wanna put together a strategic
Yeah.
action plan for this year with me?"
Yeah.
Maybe we look at a financial goal or we look at, I don't know, a travel goal or an adventure goal or something like that, you know? There's so many different strategic action plans you can put together,
That's right.
but it's one of those beautiful things of communicating, where we could go
Yeah.
and being visionaries together. Creating collective vision for the team is really important because then you're not just in the now
Yeah.
and you're not in the past because you definitely don't want to live in the past.
Right.
But if you're not right here in the present, sometimes it's nice to go and have an adventure into the future and imagine where you guys can go.
Yeah.
There's
Absolutely.
that there's a beautiful, using our creativity in that way, is so much better than revisiting the past and the ghosts.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
faith or vision are the companions to staying present. Because if we
Yeah.
fill up the unknown with, positive vision, a bright, vision, or, faith in something that, we know is going to happen, then we can kind of go, okay, great. I'm not going to worry about that anymore because I'm already believing what's going to come to pass. Now I can just go back to being present.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that there's something so beautiful. I think that a lot of times in couples therapy, they're focusing so much on what happened
Hmm.
instead of what we want to
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah.
where we want to go, where we're willing to go, the
Hmm.
work that we're willing to put in to our future, together. I think I think that's where the magic is. If you're both willing to do the work, and you're willing to use your creativity to make
Yes.
magic happen and make a beautiful future together. That's where it is. I mean, that's like when you're dating, that's what you're doing. You're imagining, oh, we'll buy this house and we'll do all this stuff and it's going to be amazing, we're going to have these beautiful kids. And then you get there and you stop being creative and you stop making strategic action plans and goals in the way that you did when you were actively dating one another. And it's like you kind of need to get back to that.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. It's taking what I call loving action, puts you in that creator mindset. So often, I think it's fascinating. When we get sort of offended, doesn't matter if it's in relationship or at work, that puts us into a victim mindset. This thing happened to me. Now I'm powerless. Oftentimes, you'll then begin to perpetrate either self or other people, self perpetration. We all know what that looks like, negative self talk. then it's maybe abuse of some sort, could be drinking or drugs, and ultimately suicide would be the worst form of self-perpetration. Perpetration we
Yeah.
typically hear about is you're violating others. So it's, verbal abuse, and that can look like all sorts of different things from, yelling to gossiping to slander, physical harm, and ultimately murder. When you interview a criminal, they'll almost always say I was justified in doing whatever I did because something happened to me first, be it the system was stacked against me or, I had to take revenge against this person. The way to get out of that victim mindset, I think, is to give yourself grace, forgiveness, and then give the other person forgiveness and grace as well. Take extreme ownership and then start taking loving action. And at least for men, when they start taking the actions that they know are right, they feel better.
Yeah, and I think women, it's the same way. I think that we would agree with that, the collective female. Yeah, when you start taking right action, it does. There's a different vibration to it because it's coming from a place of love, and not just love for your partner, but also love for yourself,
Hmm.
which is so, really, if you're not loving yourself, you're probably not loving your partner very
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
it's, we as the women, we need to love ourselves, and we need our men to love themselves too,
Yeah.
so we could do this thing, because it's
Mhm.
not easy. Marriage isn't easy. I think marriage is one of the things that we go into with we should have PhDs in marriage before we do it. Um,
Should be certainly be a
practical theory
license.
of
The marriage
marriage.
license should be more like the driver's license test.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we
Yes,
doing here?
definitely.
Like, how long is it gonna
Yeah, yeah.
take? How many more horrible, marriages and divorces need to transpire before we say, "Hey,
Yeah.
maybe we should take some sort of a test here to make sure you're
Yeah, maybe there
qualified
should
to
be
do
a
this."
handbook like there is for
How
California
about a
driving, right?
handbook? Yeah. I mean, it's
I
really
mean,
weird.
we really jump into something that's extremely complicated and
Yes.
complex
Yeah.
and has societal boundaries and issues and complexities, and yeah, marriage is this, it's a very interesting animal, and we'd all just jumped into it, so excited, just eyes closed, both feet, and, then you get in and you realize, "Oh my gosh, this is really complicated." And it doesn't have to be as complicated as it is right now, but there's the power struggle between men and women seems very real right now,
I think,
on this planet.
yeah, I think it's a refinement process. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the best way I know to describe it because
Yeah.
all of the junk, the fears and insecurities are going to bubble up to the surface or be seen in the mirror, whatever metaphor you want to use, and you're going to be forced to deal with them. And that's where, the kind of the make or break, moments happen. And make or break can look like a lot of different, there's a lot of different shades of that. But if you're not willing to work on yourself and take some extreme ownership, take responsibility, I don't know how you can really be in relationship.
I don't think you really can. At least you won't be happy. You might be able to be there, but you're probably not gonna be living in like you'll be a shell of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
You will not be in a place of happiness and living in your purpose. Because if you're not allowed to drive at all,
Hmm.
then you're probably not really I don't see how that could you could stay in a marriage. We saw our mothers do those kinds of things, that last generation stayed married even when they probably shouldn't have,
Yeah.
just waited till the wheels fell off the
Yeah.
thing. But, yeah, I think that as with radical ownership of ourselves, I think that when men can be truly happy and women can be truly happy and you can be in a marriage at the same time, bada bing, bada boom. That's where the gold's at. I mean, that's where real fundamental human happiness is going to come from, and that's how we're going to raise the happiest children. Is when they get to see both of their parents in a place of prosperity and fulfillment and purpose and fully in love. I think that's and that's where really honestly, when you're in a marriage and you have children, it's like you have to do the work for them. You wanna do the work for them.
Yeah.
You wanna show up
Yep.
and show them what you gotta model the behavior.
Yep.
Who else is gonna do it? There's no one else that can do it for us, you know? You gotta just show up and
Yeah.
model, be the best version of yourself that you can be so that they can grow up and see how to walk.
Yeah.
Bart, thank you for this honest, grounded, incredibly needed conversation. To all of our listeners, I know that you felt alone in the effort to hold your home, your work, and your relationships together. This conversation reminds us that real partnership is possible, and healing doesn't have to start with us doing more. Sometimes it starts with a man like Bart doing his work. So if you'd like to learn more about Bart's work or connect with your partner with resources that go deeper, please go to lionsdenprogram.com. And if this episode made you feel seen, I'd love for you to share it with someone, maybe a friend or even your partner, because conversations like this are how we change systems, one relationship at a time.
Thank you so much, Amy. This has been a really, really fun, fulfilling conversation. I'm grateful for you and for your audience, and just hope this podcast continues to just explode.
Thank you so much, Bart. Thanks for your time, and it was so nice having you on the show.
All right. We'll talk to you
I'll talk
soon.
to you
All
soon.
right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.